I'm a huge fan of this band in general, and Dustin Arbuckle, who does all their singing and all their harmonica playing and everything. And I was really happy that I got to do this because I have all their albums, and I just think they're an amazing band in general. And they're branching out a lot from what they originally do, and I just really enjoyed this, and I'm glad that I got the chance to talk to him because I just really enjoyed it. Um, this one's more focused. I think we don't really jump around uh, too many topics. So this is my interview with Dustin Arbuckle from Mortal and Arbuckle. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm glad you gave me your time, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, no, happy to do it. Thanks for showing the interest. Really appreciate that.
So, start from the beginning, man. How did you get into this?
Well, I guess when I was about 15 is when I started hearing blues and knowing that that's what I was hearing. And in hindsight, I realized I had always been into blues-based music, things like classic soul and early rock and roll and, traditional kind of bluesy gospel stuff when I was younger had always sounded good. I didn't really know where the influence came from, but it had always been that vibe that had sounded right. And when I was about 15, I started hearing the music and the real stuff and knowing what it was, and it just it was music that spoke to me in a way that nothing else ever really has, and it was the music that made me want to play music. And really, that's how I got started. My dad was really into this kind of stuff, and I asked him to get me some CDs for Christmas that year to kind of get me started, and then a few months later I started playing harmonica, and for me personally, that's kind of how it all began.
I was like definitely in the same boat. So as far as that goes,
It's a fairly similar story for a lot of people. It seems.
My dad introduced me to my first blues record, so
that's great.
Yeah, and so being in Kansas in the middle of nowhere, there's not like there wasn't much of a blues scene there, was there? Did you have to?
I'm sorry, man. You're breaking up for a second.
Oh,
I couldn't really.
said being in Kansas, there wasn't much of a blues scene there, was there?
Oh, there was more than you think. It's not really the middle of nowhere. Wichita's a city of almost 400,000 people, and at the time when I first was getting into the music, there was actually a pretty healthy local blues scene here. Our blues society was really active, had a lot of events, and in the late 90s and very early part of the 2000s, there was still a lot of that residual interest in the music still going from when it had been so strong in the 80s with guys like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Robert Cray and the T-Birds and all that kind of stuff. And it continued into the mid 90s with guys like Johnny Lang and Kenny Wayne Shepherd having those hits and stuff in the mid 90s. So, I mean, the pop consciousness toward blues was was still on kind of a high. So there were a lot of blues and blues rock style bands playing around the bars in Wichita when I was in my late teens and I was getting started playing music. Mostly it was that kind of Texas blues rock style. 'Cause of course that and Kansas City are sort of the main traditional blues hubs, I guess you would say, that we're the closest to.
Yeah.
So at the time there was a fairly healthy blues scene in Wichita, and of course there's been some great bands in Wichita or in Kansas City as well, and there were bands coming through. We had a pretty healthy blues club at the time that brought in a lot of national acts, so I got to see the music live a fair amount in the early days. I ended up gravitating toward a much different style, but I definitely had an opportunity to go hear it live in some form. But I started a band with some dudes I was in high school with, and it was very much your kind of blues rock bar band. We did a lot of that kind of stuff. We did a lot of Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and we did a lot of the stuff that you would expect a bunch of kids who were into blues rock stuff to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of the kind of top 40 of the blues kind of stuff. But I always kind of had an interest in the more traditional stuff and Mississippi blues, stuff like Robert Johnson and Son House, Charlie Patton, and the early Chicago blues stuff, Muddy and Wolf and Little Walter and Sonny Boy. All that kind of stuff is what really got me. And Elmore James was about the first thing that really, really bit me. That slide thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was when Aaron and I met that I finally found somebody who I could play that kind of stuff with. And we developed that kinship very quickly.
Yeah, it's you have to play with somebody you're on the same wavelength with, or it's not going to work out.
Yeah, it's very important. You got to have that shared vision.
But how did you guys would a few years ago when I first saw you just released your second album, I think.
Was it Flood?
No, it was after Caney Valley.
Oh, wow! You saw us that far back.
Yeah.
Because we released Caney Valley in January of 2005. Where did you first see us?
Wheeling.
Wheeling. I think, I think when you would have seen us that first time in Wheeling, we would have either been touring on 1861 or Flood.
It was 1861. I remember buying the album.
Yeah, that was our first label release. That before the stuff we had done in the past had all been independent releases, and now those are out of print.
Really?
You can only find them in the mists of eBay somewhere, or if you know us.
Yeah, I really liked that album. I let a lot of people listen to it. So.
Thank you.
So.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite It's probably my favorite album. I have all your CDs. So.
Well, thank you for the support. We appreciate that.
I don't know. I noticed a little bit of a difference, like in Seven Cities, that you kind of you were making like a crossover a little bit more. Like.
Say that again. You broke up one time.
In Seven Cities, you were kind of doing more of a crossover stuff. It seemed like. Definitely sounded like stuff you could play on the radio anyway.
Well, like we're always saying, we have a lot of different music that we're into and music that's influenced us, and it's always been there in what we do. The stoner rock stuff and the kind of more classic rock influences.
I really liked it because I was definitely kind of pleasantly surprised. So I was really surprised, and I was definitely surprised that the guy that was producing it produced like albums through Mastodon.
Yeah. Matt Bayless has done a whole lot of really outstanding records in completely different styles of music. Like you said, most of what he's done has been for really super heavy rock bands like Mastodon. He also did a record for The Sword called Warp Riders, which is outstanding. And then he's done a lot of other kind of synthy pop stuff. He was in a band called Minus the Bear that was sort of in that vein, and he's not in the band anymore, but he still produces their records. So it was definitely a situation where a lot of his interest in working with us came from the fact that it was something that he'd never done before. And it was also something that we had never done before. We'd never worked with a producer outside the band. We'd always kind of just self-produced. Aaron had mostly taken the reins of that.
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting experience. He definitely brought a lot to the table. He worked us real hard in the studio to get the best performances he could, and definitely has a ton of expertise as an engineer and as a mixer. His ears are outstanding.
Yeah.
He flogged us pretty good, but we ended up getting I think we ended up getting a really good record out of it. We're really proud of Seven Cities. Speaking to your point about it being kind of more crossover, it's not necessarily something we're trying to do. It's just as we've gone on, more and more of our musical influences start to creep in, and what we're doing just kind of keeps evolving. And we just want to keep making music that we like and feel like we're trying to get better as a band, and hopefully other people will dig it too.
Yeah, the thing is though, the blues crowd is just very, very picky.
In certain ways, yes, they are.
Yes.
I guess the thing is, we're not necessarily trying to play just to the blues community. Obviously, there's a lot of great bands and great music fans in the blues community, and that's primarily the scene that we've come up through. But really, we just want to play to whoever's interested. Anybody who digs our music, it doesn't really matter what age they are or where they're from or what musical scene they primarily come out of. The most important thing to us is just connecting with those people who are interested in hearing what we're doing. And we still definitely play a lot to the blues crowd, and we still, especially in our live shows, we still play a lot of really traditional blues stuff.
Yeah.
But definitely trying to evolve, continue to evolve with our sound. And, look, I'm not going to say that what we're doing is the most groundbreaking, revolutionary thing that anyone's ever heard before. But, I mean, we're certainly trying to have our own voice.
I think it's good to be creative in that aspect, so you don't get bored,
Sure.
or complacent.
Sure, absolutely.
And there is more of a universal aspect to music if you kind of look at it from, and kind of go outside the box anyway. So.
Sure, I absolutely agree. I think if you understand how to do it tastefully, and you don't try to wedge things together in a way that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You see a lot. I feel like you see a lot of bands trying too hard to be eclectic. they're trying to throw all these different influences into what they are doing. And if you don't find a way to do it tastefully in a way that all the parts sort of meld together seamlessly, it just ends up having this vibe like you're trying to throw in everything but the kitchen sink. That can definitely happen.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with you there. And I think I just think it's important to, you know, explore all your influences anyway. Just so you know, if you're playing the same thing over and over and over again, eventually it's gonna get tiring, and you're gonna start, you know, getting upset with each other because it's all you're playing anymore, and
that can certainly happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes bands just run out of ideas.
Yeah. Or they do things that have been done before, and eventually there's, it's nice at first, but then just later on there's like a total lack of interest. So
that can certainly happen.
Yeah. I wanted to have the other. What was the album after Flood?
Just a Dream.
Okay. I really like that album too.
Thank you.
I definitely heard some stoner rock in there with like gypsy violin.
Yeah, I think that was a song we always kind of like to try to do something a little out there, a little bit weird or different, just to have kind of a fun, goofy moment on the album.
I definitely liked it. That's for sure.
Well, thank you. That song has been it definitely elicited a lot of different responses. Some people found it very, very fun and very interesting. Other people found it just appalling, and we pretty much knew that was what it was going to be like.
I just found it very surreal.
Well, that's I can see that.
Because you put it like at a spot in the album where it's not what you were expecting at all after the previous song.
Yeah, that's kind of what we were hoping. Ordering the tracks on a record is an art within itself, and yeah, I'm not going to say that we're necessarily awesome at it, but we put a lot of thought into it, and hopefully it ends up sounding right.
Yeah, and I remember actually having to like listen to the song once or twice to actually get out a pen and paper and write the lyrics down, because I was like, what the hell?
That was also kind of the point.
What?
That was also kind of what we were going for.
It was, yeah. It was at first I first heard it, I caught some of it, but then I was like, wait a minute, I need to listen to this again.
Well, I'm glad you dug it. I'm glad you found it fun.
It was amusing anyway.
Good. That's what we were going for.
Yeah, I've like written some of the lines. I've like used some of the lines on my friends, and they're like, "Where the hell is that from?" I'm like, "Oh, it's from the CD I listened to."
Well, at least I guess at least some of those lines sound familiar enough to people that they think it's from something else.
Yeah.
I guess. Hopefully they pick up the album and then they remember it from that.
Yeah.
At least they're memorable. A lot of those lines actually were things that I was reading off the back of a random gypsy jazz record that was laying around in the studio where we were recording at the time. And then the rest of it was just crazy quotes from back in the history of my life, so I've heard from around.
I really like that line. something along the lines of, what is it? What was it? My girlfriend gave me the clap or something. That's not how I know it's springtime.
Oh yeah, I used to get the clap every year. That's how I always knew it was springtime. Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah, that's not me. That's somebody else. But yeah, yeah. There are a lot of crazy things from crazy old hippies, man.
And I need a glass of schnapps to wake up in the morning.
Yeah, yeah. Gotta settle the stomach.
And the other one I didn't quite understand was that was compelling though was heroin's an underrated an overrated R&B singer, and Otis Redding's a hell of a drug.
Oh, I believe that. I think what we actually did was compressed. We edited together two lines there. One was that Otis one was like that heroin was the greatest drug in the world. The other was that Otis Redding was the most overrated singer in rock and roll. Again, these are all quotes from other people. This is I'm not endorsing any of these views at all. I'm a huge Otis Redding fan, and I've never tried heroin in my life and don't intend to. But we decided it would be funny to, compress those lines together, just to make it a little bit more, a little weirder.
Yeah, it definitely sounded like something that should be on a Primus album.
Well, thanks. That's a great compliment.
If that's what you were going for.
That's a great compliment. Yeah, they're a super cool band.
Yeah, you need to do more stuff like that. I really like that highly experimental stuff. So.
Oh, well, thank you. We'll see where it goes, man. Never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah. But you're working on a new album right now, right?
Well, currently we've been recording demos. We're working on writing. The plan is to go into the studio in January. We'll be working with Matt Bayless as producer again. We're going to be working at a different studio this time. We'll be recording in Omaha. Yeah, the plan is to take a couple of weeks in January and get a new one laid down, and it's starting to come together. We feel like we've got some good tunes that we've written. We've got some really good stuff by some friends of ours that they've sent us, and still working on a couple of more tunes. It's a long process, but I think we should have another good record ready to go by sometime next year. We're going to be looking for a new label, so we'll see what happens with that.
Is it going to be like another concept album like the last one, or?
That's not really the direction we're going in right now, but truthfully, Seven Cities sort of was a concept album by accident anyway, so you never know what can happen.
Yeah.
We didn't really set out planning in the beginning to make a concept record on Seven Cities. It was just once we had the songs together, once everything was there, and we started thinking about some of the thematic qualities of the various songs and the entire record itself, we sort of realized, wait, we've got something here.
Yeah.
There is actually a concept here, and at
So
that point,
it happened by default, you weren't looking for it.
Yeah, it was like as the songs came together. Initially, we weren't looking for it, but as the songs came together, we realized that there was a theme and there was a concept. So after they were all recorded and we really gave a good listen to it, at that point it just became about putting the tracks in a specific order to really tell the story in the way that we wanted to, or to represent the theme and the concept that we were going for in the way that we wanted to. And voila, we got a concept album.
Right. Funny how things work out sometimes like that. So
It absolutely is. But as of now, the plan is not for the next record to be some sort of a concept album, but we do feel like it's another step forward for us in songwriting, and hopefully it will be from a production standpoint. It's exciting to go into the studio and have the promise of something new and something you feel like is another step forward. And we don't even exactly know we don't know exactly how it's going to end up sounding once we get in there. And obviously we have faith in the songs, and we know how the arrangements are going to sound, but you never know what kind of extra little production stuff is going to end up happening when you're in the moment or in the studio. What little extra things, what happy accidents, what good ideas somebody might have once you're there doing it. So it should end up being, we hope it's going to end up being another really good record.
Yeah, in my experience, usually the best songs come by accident anyway. If you're just fooling around and then somebody says, "Hey, that sounds good," you know.
In some cases, that's absolutely the case. We've had some of our favorite songs that we've ever written just be tunes that came out of a jam when we were practicing. You know, we're just messing around on something and there's a riff, and before we know it, we've got a song basically written a half hour later. But on the other hand, there's songs that take, you know, several rehearsals, weeks, months to totally craft and really get to be what you want them to be.
Yeah.
And some of our best stuff has been like that. Some of our best stuff has been the more kind of off the cuff, and it just sort of happens kind of a deal.
Is it easier when it's more organic like that? When it just comes out when you're really not trying? You think?
No, it's certainly easier. Yeah. That's fun and that's easy when a song happens like that. It always makes you feel really good to have it just sort of happen. That's a great feeling. But it's harder work when you have to really work to craft a song as well, but in the end there's also a lot of satisfaction to that.
Yeah. What is your you think the best song you've ever written so far, if you had to pick one?
But there's so many. I've written so many crappy songs. That's really tough. And you can get into a question of the difference between what might be your favorites and what might be the best, because they're not always the same thing. I could look at a song like Broken Sunshine, and that was a song that we all really felt was an extremely well-crafted tune, and we were really proud of it. And it's one I feel like we did a really good job with. I think it's a really good song. Mm. But as far as for my personal, the song that maybe I have the most fun playing, it's obviously I love playing that song. It's a cool tune, but there are some other songs that for me are maybe more fun to play live, or that light me up just a little bit more when we do it. Yeah, Quivira is one that I feel like I'm pretty proud of personally. And 18 Counties is one that's always had a pretty big place in my heart. Waste Away is a good one for me, one I like a lot. In the Morning I'll Be Gone, which goes all the way back to Flood. It's a song that we hardly ever play anymore. I mean, it's just like people asking what our favorite record is, man. It's like picking which of your kids you like best. If we keep playing these songs because we like them. That's why we decided to move forward with them and record them and put them out on records. And Picking your favorite's a very, very difficult thing. I would have a very hard time doing that.
Yeah,
That's a tough one.
it's definitely it's subjective. It really is.
Well, absolutely, because there are a lot of songs that we've written that we thought were really great tunes and that we were super, super proud of, and maybe because of the way they just go over in the live setting, maybe don't go over with crowds as well as others do.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Broken Sunshine is a great example of that. We all felt like that was a great song, and a bunch of our other musician friends said, "Man, that's a killer tune. That's one of the best tunes you guys have ever written. That's awesome." And then sometimes live, sometimes live, that's one that falls a little bit flat with the crowd, just depending on what they're wanting to hear on a given night, you know?
Yeah, you really never know. You never know what you're going to run into in a live setting. So
Yeah, you just don't. You just don't exactly know. Different crowds want to hear different things on different nights. Sometimes they really want you to just pound out the hard rockers, and it's a whole night of good hard driving shuffles and just heavy kind of Mississippi 2-beat kind of stuff, and our heavier tunes on the cigar box and things like that. And other nights you get a crowd that's a little more mellow and they want to hear more of the ballads or more of the mellow stuff, or those are the nights where Aaron and I might play 2 or 3 songs, just the two of us, a little more, kind of country blues style.
Yeah. Do you think there's a difference between the crowds over here in America as opposed to like Europe?
Yes, there's definitely a difference.
What was it? What do you think what would you?
The crowd in Europe is younger.
What?
The crowd in Europe is younger.
Really?
Yes, in continental Europe particularly. We get a lot more young people out to the shows over there than here.
I actually think that's a good thing.
Oh, I think it's a great thing. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, I'm happy to play to. We all are happy to play to whoever wants to hear our music, and it's just something that we've noticed. Here, the majority of our crowd is 40 to 60. And in Europe, we get everything from 18-year-old kids to, the 60 and 70-year-old grandparents,
Yeah.
It's very cool. It's very cool. The UK is more similar to here. We definitely do still get more young people in the UK than we do here in the States. And granted, even in the States, it seems like different areas, we tend to get more younger people. We get more younger people here closer to home.
Yeah.
Because when we were younger, in the earlier days of the band, we split here around Wichita. We would split a lot of shows with rock bands.
Yeah.
So we developed a fan base among the younger rock audience in town. And it seems like when you get into the South, there's just a bigger youthful audience for blues and roots music than there. Well, and then you get into, there is a young crowd for that kind of alt roots music stuff, the kind of thrash bluegrass stuff and that punk blues sort of a crowd, and obviously the jam band scene.
Yeah.
But when we get in front of those crowds, we seem to connect with them. But again, primarily playing to the blues scene here in the States, it's mostly a kind of a middle-aged audience. But yeah, not in Europe. We definitely get a much wider range of people there, which is really cool. It's cool to see 18-year-old kids out there having a good time and digging what you're doing. and knowing that they're going to be listening to this music, and knowing that the kids over there are just more open to American roots music than a lot of younger American kids are, is really cool.
Yeah. It is nice to have see younger kids, because then that stuff can span generations. So
Absolutely.
I mean, I was in 2005. I was 19.
Right.
So I'm 29 now.
Right.
Yeah, I picked up your first that album, and then just rolled with it since then, and it kind of followed you. So.
Well, and that's really cool. It's really cool that that there are guys like you out there that we've connected with, who are closer to our own age. And but again, that's not a slam on anyone else. It's just cool to connect with a younger audience as well, because they're gonna continue to be coming out to shows for the next 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
If we can continue to play music that long.
Yeah.
And they bring a different energy.
Yeah.
The younger crowd brings a different kind of energy. There's advantages to both. Because older folks definitely buy more records.
That is true.
But older people buy more CDs, younger people buy more vinyl.
Yeah, that's actually really weird how that goes.
It's cool that vinyl's come back. I'm a big, all of us are big fans of vinyl, and that's why we've made a point of pressing our last 2 records, and because it's the only hard copy medium of music that's actually still growing. Everything else, CD sales have dropped way off, and most people buy their music in MP3 form now, unless they're buying it on vinyl.
Yeah.
And it's cool because almost everybody's putting out vinyl again, it seems like.
Yeah, it does. It definitely seems that way. Yeah, I picked up. I had 1861 for a while, and then I just introduced that to a lot of my friends, and I think shortly after I ended up putting down the guitar. I need to start playing it again anyway, and I started messing around with the harmonica, and then realized it was an instrument I like to play. So
it's a fun instrument.
Yeah.
And man, there's a million guitar players out there. The world needs more harmonica players.
It's true. There's not very many of us, that's for sure.
One thing I love about being a harmonica player is the kinship between the players. There doesn't seem to be a lot of a competitive vibe. Most harp players seem to be pretty interested in being friendly and talking shop and sharing knowledge.
It's definitely a big fraternity, so
I absolutely feel that way. But man, I think playing any instrument is good for you. I think as much music as you can play is a good thing.
Yeah.
Good for your mental health and your emotional health, and just good for your soul,
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what my sound is, because I spent a lot of my life listening to different guys and saying, I don't want to sound like that guy. I want to sound like that guy, and then realizing it doesn't matter. It's no good to copy somebody else. You have to find your own style.
Well, absolutely. I'm a big believer that any artist is a sum of their influences. The special ones are the ones who can find a way to take all those varied influences and create something very much their own, find their own voice on top of all that. Because there's a lot of really great musicians and a lot of really cool bands that I think are maybe just kind of consumed with their influences. It doesn't mean it's not still great music and they're not still fun to listen to, but it's the really special ones that find their own thing on top of all that. We're all a sum of our influences. If you can listen to anybody, no matter how original they are, and at some level, you're going to hear, oh, he listened to a lot of this band, or he listened to a lot of that guy, or she clearly was really influenced by this person. But it's interesting to see the people who really find their own thing.
Yeah, I just noticed with harmonica players, there's so many different influences that I have, just because there's so many out there.
Oh, sure.
And,
absolutely.
I mean, I first started listening to John Popper, and then I realized, okay, this guy's really good, but he's not particularly a blues artist. And
no, he's not.
After that, I started listening to Little Walter, and that kind of changed the game for me. So,
Little Walter's changed the game for a lot of harmonica players.
Yeah.
A guy like Popper is an extremely talented harmonica player. And it's good to draw influence from a lot of different sources, because it's just a lot more. It's a lot of ideas. You can get different ideas. It's you're going to get completely different things from Sonny Boy, both Sonny Boy 1 or Sonny Boy 2, that you're going to get from Walter. You're going to get different things from Big Walter, and George Harmonica Smith and Kim Wilson and Charlie Musselwhite, and one of my very favorites, my favorite harmonica player that I've ever known is a fella named Lee McBee from Kansas City, or around Kansas City. He unfortunately passed earlier this year, but Lee was an outstanding singer and harmonica player that not that many people know that much about, but he was a tremendous influence on me.
Yeah, I was somebody else that kind of influenced my playing was Jason Ricci too.
Ricci is an extremely, extremely talented harmonica.
Yeah, I just love the way that he started. He definitely changed the game as far as bringing in like distortion pedals and stuff like that, and
he's definitely got his own trip. No doubt about that.
He's a different breed, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just amazing. He's just amazingly talented.
Yeah, he is. He is very talented. Very talented.
I could go on. I can go on and on. Guys like the last podcast I did with Brandon Santini. Brandon's very, very good.
Brandon's outstanding. I love Brandon. He's a great dude too, man. He's a good friend, and he is an outstanding singer and harmonica player. I'm a big fan of what Brandon does. I'm also. Have you ever listened to Steve Mariner from Monkey Junk up in Canada? Yeah, he is another killer harp player and younger dude. But yeah, there's a lot of great guys out there, man.
Some guys I really like from Vancouver that I saw them a few years ago, but I haven't heard much of them since then. Was the Harpoonist and the Axe Motor.
Oh, it seems like I've heard of those guys, but I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, I had one of their albums, and then they just did a lot of different stuff. So
cool. Well,
I can't even remember the name of their album. I have it. I just don't know where it is.
Oh, it's around somewhere. I'm sure you just got to dig for it after you clean your house again.
I just appreciate you talking to me, man, because I have all your albums, and you've been an influence to me, like harmonica wise, and
well, that's a great honor to hear you say that, man. Thank you so much.
And I tried to catch a show you in Pittsburgh a while back, but I couldn't make it, and I didn't have the money to afford it. So.
Yeah, that's probably the closest we've been to you for a while. Well, man, we'll be back out that direction one of these days.
Well, the bar in Wheeling now is taking in national blues acts like every month now.
Oh, really? What's the place called?
River City.
River City?
Yeah.
Cool. We'll have to see about getting in there.
I think Brandon's already booked there for like next year, I think.
Cool. Well, I'll have to ask him about that. Thanks for the heads up on that.
Yeah.
We need to get back to the festival. It's still, I really think that Wheeling's one of the very, very best, one of the very best blues festivals in the country. I feel like Bruce does a really killer job with it. It's always, both years it's been
I've never gone, and it hasn't been good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm getting ready to relocate and move there anyway, because like there's a scene that's starting to develop there, so I want to kind of be in the middle of that. So.
Ooh, that's great, man.
And here it's the same thing. We have guys that DJ, and then there's your like 80s cover band. That's it.
Well, unfortunately, it's like that in a lot of areas.
It's a dime a dozen. If I've heard any song by Poison, I've heard it a million times.
Well, man, there's a place for all of it, right?
Yeah.
Well, man, I appreciate your interest, and I appreciate all the kind words. I hope I didn't ramble on too badly. But thanks, man, and hopefully we'll see you out there in the big wide world at some point.
All right, man, I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. You take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, see ya.